Hey, Michael, good morning. Yeah, Prince Harry's court case against Associated Newspapers, that's the publisher behind the Daily Mail, is set to begin Monday, and ABC News understands that Prince Harry will be there on opening day.
Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, an exclusive in The Sun on Sunday, Rafe. Meg's summer return. The Duchess of Sussex is planning to return to the United Kingdom for the first time in 4 years. Meghan is due to join hubby Prince Harry at an Invictus Games event in Birmingham.
So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the two little hucksters from Montecito, they're going crawling back to the UK.
Witness intimidation, dishonesty, fraud, and conspiracy. Those are some of the allegations against Prince Harry and his legal team.
Meghan Markle's insane list of diva demands absolutely went viral, so much so that Meghan has apparently hit back at the claims. Are you sitting down for the
Sussex team? There's the Sussex PR team, as they can
yeah, the PR team, yeah.
Some highly manipulative storylines to try to pressure the royal family.
What happens when someone who hates the spotlight keeps running straight back into it, and this time there's nowhere to hide? All right, let's talk about what's really going on here, because on the surface, this looks like Prince Harry heading back to the UK for another big moment, but scratch even a little bit beneath that surface and it turns into something else entirely. Not a victory lap, not a heroic return, more like walking directly into a storm that's been quietly building for months. Prince Harry is going back to Britain, yes, but instead of applause, flags, or warm public sentiment, he's facing a courtroom that's already sharpening its knives. His lawsuit against Associated Newspapers, the company behind the Daily Mail, is officially kicking off. And instead of looking stronger as it approaches trial, it's starting to look shaky, really shaky. And the allegations flying around this case are not minor. We're talking about claims of dishonesty, fraud, witness intimidation, forged signatures, and coordinated misconduct. This isn't procedural nitpicking. This is the kind of language that makes judges sit up straighter and lawyers start sweating through their suits. If Harry loses this case, the estimated financial hit could land somewhere around £38 million. Let that number sit for a second. $38 million. That's not oops, bad investment money. That's life-altering, legacy-altering money, even for a prince. And what makes this whole situation more unsettling is the timing. While this lawsuit is unraveling in public, Harry is also pushing hard to regain full automatic police security in the UK. And he's tying that argument, emotionally and symbolically, to wounded veterans and the Invictus Games. That overlap isn't accidental. Stick with me, because once you line everything up, the strategy starts to look a lot less random. So let's rewind and get clear on what this lawsuit is actually about. Harry is suing Associated Newspapers, claiming that journalists illegally gathered information about him more than 20 years ago. The accusations include hiring private investigators, planting listening devices, tracking vehicles, accessing phone records, and tapping private conversations. Heavy stuff, serious accusations. But here's the thing. These events are alleged to have happened decades ago. That matters, because in court, time isn't just a detail, it's a weapon. Memories fade, evidence disappears, standards change, and the burden of proof doesn't get lighter just because someone feels wronged. Harry didn't go it alone either. He brought in 6 other claimants, including Elton John and a handful of other public figures. That turned this into a massive group lawsuit, expected to run for about 9 weeks. 9 weeks of testimony, documents, cross-examinations, and lawyers doing what lawyers do best, poking holes in everything. But here's where the case starts to wobble. The Daily Mail's legal team isn't just disputing the claims, they're attacking the foundation of the case itself. They're questioning how this lawsuit was built, who built it, and whether some of the key pieces holding it together are real. At the center of that storm is a private investigator named Gavin Burrows. His witness statement was reportedly crucial in persuading other claimants to join the case. In other words, his testimony helped get this whole thing off the ground. Except now, Burrows is saying something explosive. He claims that a witness statement dated August 2021, which carried his name, was prepared by others without his knowledge. And more than that, he says the signature on that document wasn't his. Forged, that's the allegation. Let that sink in. A witness whose statement helped launch the lawsuit is now saying the document was fake and the signature wasn't his. If that holds up in court, this stops being messy and starts being radioactive. It gets worse. Burrows is reportedly so afraid of what's happening that he refuses to disclose his current location. Not to the claimants, not to the defense, nobody. Because of that, the judge is considering an extraordinary step. The court itself may be the only entity that knows where this witness is. That doesn't happen in normal civil cases. That happens when things have gone sideways in a very real way. Harry's own lawyer told the court that Burrows believes testifying could put him at personal risk. When a witness is that scared, the mood in the courtroom changes instantly. This stops being theoretical. It becomes tense, unpredictable. And why is Burrows so shaken? Allegations of witness intimidation have now entered the conversation. According to court arguments, he was contacted by the Byline Times just before he was due to testify and told that an article about him was about to be published. Burrows reportedly interpreted that as a warning shot. Whether that was the intent or not, the timing alone raised eyebrows, big ones. And then there's this detail that's honestly hard to believe if you didn't hear it yourself. Harry's legal research team includes Graham Johnson. Yes, that Graham Johnson, a convicted phone hacker, former News of the World employee, someone who has already been found guilty of the very acts Harry claims to be fighting against. You don't need to be a legal expert to see the contradiction here. You can't stand on the moral high ground while holding hands with someone convicted of the same acts you're condemning. It undercuts the entire argument. And that's not where the credibility questions stop. The Daily Mail's legal team are alleging that some witnesses may have been paid for their testimony. That's a nightmare scenario in any courtroom. Once money enters the picture, every word gets scrutinized differently. Even truthful testimony starts to feel suspect when there's a financial incentive attached. Now let's talk about the money, because this is where things get very real, very fast. The estimated cost of this 9-week trial is £38 million. The court actually held a separate hearing just to make sure all parties understood the financial risk. That wasn't symbolic, that was a warning. Under UK civil law, if you lose, you don't just pay your own legal costs, you pay the other side's costs too. It's designed to discourage weak or unnecessary lawsuits. Most of the claimants in this case only have insurance coverage up to about £2 million. That sounds like a lot until you realize how quickly legal fees pile up. Once that coverage is gone, the rest comes out of personal pockets. And here's the uncomfortable scenario nobody seems eager to discuss. If Harry somehow wins his individual claim, but the other 6 claimants lose theirs, Harry walks away fine, the others don't. They'd still be on the hook for massive legal bills they might not be able to pay. That's not just risky, that's potentially ruinous. So why push so hard on claims tied to events from 25 years ago? That's where things stop being about newspapers and start being about Harry himself. This lawsuit feels less like accountability and more like unfinished business, old anger, old scores, pride. And here's where everything starts to connect. Harry is expected back in the UK this summer for an Invictus Games countdown event in Birmingham, and according to leaked reports, Meghan Markle will only attend if an extraordinary list of demands is met. Entire hotel floors shut down, luxury vehicles with full-time drivers, constant security presence. Reports even claim bullet-resistant glass was requested. Bullet-resistant glass at a sporting event honoring wounded veterans. On top of that, there were claims that anyone interacting with Meghan is expected to address her as Her Royal Highness, despite the fact that she no longer uses that title after stepping away from royal duties. So the obvious question is, who's paying for all this? Is it Invictus funds, donations meant to support veterans? Because if so, that's deeply troubling. And here's the timing that makes this impossible to ignore. All these stories about security fears and heightened risk are surfacing right now, just as a decision is being considered about whether Harry should receive automatic armed police protection in the UK. This doesn't look like coincidence, it looks like pressure.
Take the so-called stalker story that's been circulating.
Photos exist showing Harry at past events with the same woman now being described as a threat. She's been widely identified as a devoted supporter, a Sussex Squad fan. That doesn't line up with the narrative being pushed. Meanwhile, the Metropolitan Police are dealing with massive budget cuts. Resources are stretched thin. And yet, Harry appears to expect round-the-clock protection despite not being a working royal and not living in the UK. No other non-working royal gets that treatment. And Invictus itself is starting to push back. At the last event in Canada, reports surfaced that some veterans were unhappy with Meghan's presence, feeling the focus had shifted away from them. There are now claims some may boycott if she attends again. That contrast gets even sharper when you consider that Meghan's father recently underwent serious medical treatment, yet reports say she hasn't visited or reached out. But she's expected to appear at Invictus, pose with wounded veterans, and present herself as deeply compassionate. People notice those contradictions. Zoom out and you see a pattern. Lawsuits that go nowhere, PR narratives that backfire, security demands that alienate the public, projects that underperform, and now a court case that's threatening to collapse under its own weight. Here's the irony that's impossible to ignore. Harry is suing newspapers for invading his privacy, for exposing personal details, for allegedly accessing private information. But who shared the most intimate details of Harry's life with the world? Harry did. In his book, in documentaries, in interviews. Nobody forced him to do that. No editor demanded it. No reporter made him describe deeply personal family moments. He chose to do it, for money, for attention. And now, after the fallout, he's blaming the media. The Daily Mail is probably making more money covering Harry walking into court today than it ever did from articles written decades ago. Every appearance feeds the cycle. Drama creates clicks, and somehow he keeps playing along. The trial begins this week. Harry is scheduled to testify, and that raises the real question. Will he actually take the stand? Because once cross-examination begins, there's no editing, no friendly interviewer, no sympathy nods. Every inconsistency gets dragged into the light. Every timeline gets tested. Court isn't Netflix. And that's why settlements so often happen right before testimony, not because someone feels generous, but because the risk becomes impossible to manage. A quiet settlement saves face, no sworn answers, no transcripts that live forever. If you've been following this saga and you've got thoughts, drop them in the comments. I read them. If this breakdown helped you see the bigger picture, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And give the video a like if you made it this far. It really helps. Thanks for watching. I genuinely appreciate you being here.